Fright Night Friday.
It is that time again, Neil. Fright Night Friday. We're talking about missing people here. Let's travel back to Christmas Eve,
Okay.
1945. What were you doing?
Oh, let me think. I just finished university.
Wow.
I'm not that old.
Yes, okay. But you know what? I'm just
Comedian,
kidding.
comedian.
I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Kidding. Christmas Eve, 1945. Many of the families out there might be celebrating Christmas. Not so much for this family over in the US. West Virginia, the Sauter family of the Fayetteville. Have you heard of this one before?
Which one?
The Sauter family.
Oh, no.
They experienced the tragedy that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Now, on Christmas Eve 1945, a fire broke out in their home. And George, the father, Jenny Sauter, the mother, and their 4 out of their 9 children were able to escape. The other 5 children disappeared without a trace. The fire started at about 1:30 a.m., and George and Jenny were awakened by the sound of breaking glass, the smell of smoke, and the fire that was burning all around. So George quickly rushed downstairs to investigate what was going on. And he found out that the fire had started in the basement. And it was spreading so fast, he needed to get his kids out of the house as soon as possible. So the parents began to wake all their children up. They've got 9 kids. They woke the first 4 of them. They managed to rescue the 4 of them, but the 5 others were nowhere to be found. George tried to re-enter the house to save the 5 of them, but the fire was just too intense for him to get back in. So the fire department arrived shortly after the fire started, but by the time they arrived, the house had been completely destroyed, and the bodies of the 5 missing children were never found.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, after the fire, the police and fire department searched the ruins of the house, and surrounded the area just to find any trace of the children, but to no avail. All wasn't successful at all. Now, in an article that was published back in December 29th of 1945, the newspaper quoted Sheriff George Patterson as saying he believed that the children perished in the fire, but the search will continue until all hope is lost. Now, the Sauter family also conducted their own search for the children. They offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to the return of their kids. They also placed posters all around, as anyone would. Despite all their efforts, the Sauter children were never found. 5 of them. And there have been a few potential leads about the case over the few years, but none of them have been able to solve the mystery. Now, there's this one particular lead that I like, that was mentioned over the internet. And it was reported in the news as well, in fact. Now, the Sauter family had a dog named Buster.
Okay.
Okay? And he was the only member of the family who was not at home on the night of the fire. Now, Buster was found the next day wandering around the town. And he looked very upset. And it was reported, or some people believe, that Buster may have been able to give clues about what happened to the children. But unfortunately, dogs cannot talk. But, okay. It was a strange lead.
Yeah.
It was reported. I had to mention it. But let's just talk about the few theories, about what happened to the kids. And some of the most common theories include the children, they died in a fire. That's the most likely theory, but it's also the most difficult to prove because, some believe that, there were some inconsistencies to it. For example, the kids' bedroom was on the 2nd floor, and there was no evidence to show that the fire ever reached that part of the house. In fact, the children's beds were not disturbed, and their belongings were still in the room. So that was a bit strange.
Yeah, very strange.
So basically, from the 1st floor and below, that's where the fire was. That was what was destroyed by the fire.
Okay.
But the 2nd level was left pretty much untouched, right? Now, that's the first theory. The second theory was that the children were kidnapped. It's another popular theory, And there's some evidence to support this one because one witness reported seeing a car speeding away from the Sauter house on the night of the fire. And there's a letter that they received in 1967, just about 22 years later, of a young man who looked like Louis Sauter. I believe it's one of the 5 kids that went missing. But there was no concrete evidence to show that the kids or the children were kidnapped. And the identity of the man remains unknown.
Oh, interesting.
He's just disappeared.
Wow.
The last one is a less likely theory, is that the kids, all the children, ran away from home. But it's
before the fire.
Before the fire or during the fire.
Right, to escape.
Yeah, to escape, but without the parents' knowledge. But it was strange because the Sauter children were all teenagers. They couldn't possibly support themselves. And they may have decided to run away from home for I don't know whatever reason. But there was no evidence to suggest that they did that because they left their belongings behind. Would you run away from home because of a fire?
Yeah, briefly, but I would return to my family afterwards, right? I'd only have to run out into the street 50 meters away and then come straight back to my parents.
So what's the theory then, Neil? To the 5 kids. You write a lot of investigative, stories about these.
Here's what I think.
Yeah, what do you think?
The clue is the dog. You said there was a dog, and the dog survived.
Yeah.
Now, it's well known that dogs have fabulous rescue skills.
Yeah.
So I think the dog pulled them out one at a time.
Yeah.
And then the dog raised the children like Tarzan, right? And then they became like these forest creatures and were never seen again.
Wow. I like that one. That's a good theory. Neil, I was going with that one, honestly. That was all painted in my head. But yes. All right. Despite the many theories and the surrounding, the disappearance of the Sauter family, the case still remains unsolved to this day. So I guess we will never know unless we can get the dog to speak.
Unless the forest people could make an appearance at some point.
Perhaps so. But till the time comes, I suppose we'll leave it as that. So that's it. And that's all we have for Fright Night Friday.
Money FM 89.3